Hello and welcome to In the Pocket. My name's Jonny.
And my name's Chris.
Two totally average bass players, and we're here to talk all about that bass. As well as answering your questions at home, each week we take a look at the latest news and maybe break down some tones, all to give you the lowdown on the low end. Ladies and gentlemen, today's guest needs no introduction, but I'm going to do it anyway, or at least try my best, because as always with guests, I have written a little poem to introduce them to you. Okay, here we go. From the land of Canada comes a man crafting guitars with a bold new plan. Brilliant basses as good as it gets, with extended range and fanned frets. Fantastic features, I can't name them all. Please welcome to the show, Sheldon Dingwall.
Oh, amazing.
Welcome, good sir. This has been a long time in the making. It's lovely to have you. How are you doing?
I'm doing excellent. Thank you so much. Really great to talk to you guys.
That is quite all right. The pleasure is indeed ours. If the people at home, have been living under a rock in the bass world, or perhaps, you're not that way inclined into, more alternative music and things like that, as Dingwall basses tend to lean a little bit towards, and we'll talk about that later on for sure. Sheldon Dingwall is, of course, the owner of Dingwall Guitars, which are famed for, kind of pioneering basses in the more metal scene, but also not as well with famous players like Leland Sklar, famously sporting a Dingwall on stage and in the studio. We're going to get into all of that later on. But first of all, we need to start things off by asking three quick-fire intro questions so the audience can get to know you, Sheldon, a little bit more. Chris, I'm going to start off with the first one, and then would you like to go and do the second one, and then I'll do the third one?
Why not?
Fantastic. Okay, Mr. Dingwall, can you please tell us, what was your first bass?
The first complete bass was a multiscale, and it was finished on January 13th, 1993 at 7:30 in the morning.
I enjoy the specifics. A whole year older than us as well. Very nice.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, tell us more about that bass. How did you come to that conclusion with that instrument itself? And what made you go, yes, I've done it? Or what was the goal?
Well, at that point, I actually hadn't heard it played. And so I didn't realize I'd done it yet, whatever done it means. But I finished it off. I worked all night to finish it off because I had a flight to California to the NAMM show at 9:30 in the morning. And so it was a rush to the finish line. And it evolved over the development process. Originally, it was going to be a neck through headless. And when I received the hardware, I was like, oh, this is super heavy, and I don't think it's going to work as well as I'd hoped. So switched gears and made it a bolt-on headed, and haven't looked back since.
Wow. Amazing. We've had a couple of questions about headlesses and things like that, and maybe where the future of Dingwall will go. But you have to stay tuned for our Patreon only section where you can hear all about that. Chris, have you got the second question right there?
I do. Sheldon, we would like you to describe your bass playing in 3 words.
I can do it in 2, and hopefully this doesn't cause the end of the podcast, but non-existent.
Non-existent. Oh,
yeah.
No, there's a hyphen. There's a hyphen with non-existent. I'd argue that's 1 word.
Oh, yeah, you're right. You're right.
I think that counts.
And the reason for that is I've been a visitor to the bass world for my entire career, and I'm just happy that you guys will have me part of the world.
Well,
wow,
absolutely.
It's really interesting you say that, because when I think of you and Dingwall and stuff like that, I almost don't see you as a player. It's so strange to explain now. It's just never crossed my mind of seeing you play the bass, I always think of like, this is Sheldon Dingwall. He's the head of Dingwall Guitars, and then you're always pictured with other people talking about the bassist, playing about the bassist, stuff like that. And I've never seen you sat down playing a Dingwall, which is very, very, interesting. It's like almost like the Mandela effect. You've just gone, oh yeah.
Well, there's a reason why I've never played bass on camera, and that's because I still lack the ability to play bass. I come from
no.
piano,
You and me
drums,
both.
guitar, and bass was something I did play in my younger days, but really I was stronger as a guitar player and as a drummer, and then got into bass building through the world of piano. That's where I saw the solution to a rubbery, dull sounding B string was just do what the piano guys are doing.
So very true. So very, very true. And that's the analogy I use whenever I show up with my NG2 and people go, why is it like that? And I'm like, I'm so glad you asked.
Welcome to my TED Talk.
Me and Jonny say to each other, welcome to today's podcast. Me and Jonny describe ourselves as two totally average bass players. So maybe by the end of this episode, you'll feel confident enough to join us and we can be a trio of average bass players.
I'll be the audience. I'll cheer you guys on. Everybody needs an audience.
Absolutely. We'll have you along for every episode. It'd be fantastic.
Come on down. Yeah.
Yeah. And so let's tweak our last question then a little bit, because I want to dive into that musical journey a little bit more and see how you started out and where that led to where we are today. So can you tell us, for the third question, why did you first pick up music and instruments?
Oh, wow. I started on pots and pans, waking up at 7 a.m. and crawling into the kitchen and banging on pots and pans. And almost every drummer that I've ever met started the same way. And so it comes naturally, I think, to musicians. They're just drawn to things that make noise, and they really connect with rhythm, they connect with melody, and I was the same. Started studying classical piano when I was 5, and even before that, I would go up to the piano and I'd listen to sustained bass notes, and then I'd go over and listen to the non-sustained treble keys, and just much preferred the lower end of the piano. Richer, fuller, better sustained.
Yeah, and it's so funny you say that, because one of the first aha moments I had is when I was looking at a pack of bass strings once, and it said on the back for that piano-like attack, and I was like, oh, that makes so much sense to me. This is little Johnny when he was, a wee boy, not like last week, I swear.
Yeah.
No, when I was probably 14, I was like, oh, like a piano. Yeah, that's what I want my bass to sound like. And it's that kind of consistent, but nice and warm with loads of overtones happening around it. And it's just like a piano, especially on that low end. You can feel it when you play that note. And that's what the bass is all about at the end of the day, isn't it?
Yeah, there have been thousands of years of development gone into harps and then pianos and that whole family, and now multiscale basses. And you'll notice that instruments that use the multiscale, so harps and pianos, they can cover a huge range, larger than any other orchestral instrument. And so if you use the violin family, it would require 4 separate instruments to cover the same territory as a piano. But then if you look at them, the double bass has long strings and the violin has shorter strings. So even in that family, they're still doing multiscale. And so it's an interesting concept when you really start digging into it. It's been my entire career, and I'm still learning things.
Absolutely. I think that's amazing. And the ability to see what's happening with one instrument and just apply it to the other. What made you obviously had that aha moment that this could be applied here. Was it a specific issue that had come up with a bass not really sustaining, or a low B not really working, that made you then think, I might have the solution to this? Or did the kind of solution present itself first, and then you thought, I could apply this to guitars?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Do you ever have a problem that keeps you up at night, where you wake up and
Yeah,
you're
but
thinking about it?
yeah, we definitely can't talk about that on this, but yeah.
Um, and so the memory I talked about when I was younger than 5, I'm not sure what age, but 3 to 4 years old, and I still remember it like it was yesterday, hitting those low keys, and so that memory stuck with me. And I was building guitars, and I'd get a call from a bass player who said, I really like that guitar you built for my friend. Could you make me a 5-string bass? And so the first question is, well, what are you looking for that you can't find? And they were all looking for the same thing. They're all looking for a 5-string bass where the B string had the same tonality as the rest of the strings. And well, because I wasn't building basses, I didn't know how to solve that problem. And I pretty much figured if the existing bass brands that have been building basses for forever haven't figured this out, then really I have nothing to offer. And so I turned down bass order after bass order after bass order, but found myself waking up in the middle of the night going, come on, there's got to be a solution. They can do it on pianos. And one day, I opened up a Guitar Player magazine and I saw a Novak's fan fret system, and it was like, oh, that's how you can do it. Because really, only the B string needs to be lengthened. That's the only string that we were trying to solve for at the moment. And it turns out over time that there were other things that were solved by multiscale as well. But in the initial days, it was just, how do we solve the B string problem? And so talked to piano builders and piano repair people and salespeople, and it was real clear, real fast, that scale length it's not everything, but it accounts for like a lot. And so that's where I first applied my efforts, was in, all right, how long does the B string need to be in order for it to sound like an E string? And that's where we came up with the 37 inches.
I'm imagining now like early prototypes of like a 50-inch B string. How long does it need to be? Like absolutely going wild with these.
It sounds amazing, but we can't play it.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, that was my first concern, was when I came to the conclusion that 37 was the minimum that you could go to get what I was looking for. Then I was like, okay, well, the trails run cold now, because nobody wants to play a 37-inch scale. I had no idea there was Carl Thompson. I'd never heard of him at that time. So, I was ignorant of him and just assumed that, yeah, people can barely play 34. Why would they want to play 37? And it was, Novak's was the key.
Amazing. And, a lot of these bass players that were asking you to build these for you, were they predominantly in, the heavier music realm, or were they kind of all different genres or all different backgrounds?
All different genres. We've always built for like we're music agnostic. So we try to build them to be as versatile as possible. It's a tool for a musician to create, and what they choose to create with it is up to them. It's not up to us.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's only been like almost a happy accident that the metal and alternative community has really embraced it, and taken it to, because of the aggressive nature of their playing and the down tuning of the music, that they've really embraced that extended range. And Chris, you've got something to say about that as well, haven't you? Because you use your Dingwall for weddings, right?
Yeah, I only own one 5-string bass, and it's my NG2, which I bought 3 years ago, maybe something like that. And that's probably my favorite bass to take to a wedding gig, especially when I need a 5-string, because of what you said, Sheldon. Because Like for me, my issue whenever I was like looking for a 5-string was like E, A, D, G all sound one way, and then you would get to that B, and there would either I always seem to find like a huge drop in volume or a real big difference in terms of like the balance, in terms of say like the low end would go up loads, but I'd lose all of the note. It would just become a big fundamental with no like I just wouldn't be enjoyable to play, and it'd be flappy. Like I'm quite a, be it passionate playing or bad technique, I'm quite a heavy-handed player, especially with a pick. And then a band I was in at the time, which is really interesting because the band I was in at the time was like a modern heavy music band, like a bit of a modern metal kind of thing. And that's what led me to go, well, we're doing this. All of our songs are in drop A. I'll just get a Dingwall. Nolly's got a Dingwall. I'll get a Dingwall. That was my thoughts, and I bought that Dingwall, and it stayed as a mental pigeonholing of no. This is the heavy music bass. We always run it active. We always boost the low end. We always cut the mids. We always run it in parallel, and we always use a pick, and we always use distortion. And that was where it sat for a very long time. And then over time, as it's I've needed a 5-string for a pop gig, or I've needed a 5-string for a wedding gig, and all that sort of stuff. That's crept in, and I've gone, like you said, oh, actually, this is actually a really well-rounded instrument. There was no reason for it to be filed away under as this is a metal bass. Like I run mine passive. In series, there's no battery in the back of my NG anymore. I've taken it out, so I can't even turn it active if I want to. And for me, it's just I run it super clean, just like a nice DI sound. And in fact, it's next to me, and the strings are dead as a doornail. Like they are really, really battered, like hours and hours and hours of playing. And it's my favorite. It's my favorite 5-string, but it's very interesting to hear as well. Like Jonny was mentioning, and you were just saying, I discovered Dingwall through people like Nolly and Jacob Emanski and all of these players that sit in that technical progressive metal zone. And but in reality, Lee Sklar's been playing one for over 30 years now, maybe 20 years, 30 years. And a very different player to someone like Nolly. And that kind of brings me around to a question, really. I'd personally like to know, how did the conversation with John Taylor from Duran Duran come about?
Oh, that's a great story. Another one of those memories where I remember most of that day with perfect clarity. So John's tech, Bernie, reached out via email, and at first I thought, yeah, right, somebody's punking me, and so I almost deleted the email, and then I thought, you know what, but maybe it's not, maybe I'm not being punked, and so I replied, and essentially John he was in Canada, and he was having dinner with another bass builder and Bernie, and I've heard two different versions of the story, but the end result was he saw a photo of a Dingwall bass, and he goes, "Oh, that looks interesting. Bernie, can you reach out to him?" And so he reached out to us, and we prepped and got a bass to FedEx 1 minute after cutoff, and got it on a plane, hand delivered it to the plane, and got it into John's hands the next day. And
what model was that? What model was that bass?
that was a matte black combustion EMG preamp maple fingerboard, and he liked it enough that became the first step in the relationship. It's just like
Good
that.
combo.
And so with John, we've always been just, we're just happy to work with him. Been a huge fan of Duran my entire career. Even though I was a guitar player, John was still my favorite member of the band. And so we've just tried our best to get him basses that he likes and appreciates, and that eventually became a John Taylor model. And we brought in Rupert Neve Design, and so it was a really exciting model to create.
So cool. And like, I played one the other day for the first time, and it's such a different sounding preamp, I think, to what I might have expected before. That Neve preamp is lovely, I think. Really, really cool. Were there any like specifics that John wanted out of the bass? You know, did he have Neve preamps in mind before, or was that a recommendation that came from yourself?
That was something that came from a Nashville bass player named Mike Bernardello, and that conversation went all the way back to my best guess is mid '90s. And so I had wanted to work with Rupert Neve Design ever since, but just didn't feel like we had enough leverage or pull or brand value for them to even pick up the phone. And so I never even tried to call them. And Nick Wells was the one who actually reached out to them on our behalf and got the conversation started. And then it turns out that, like all musical instrument companies or electronics companies in the MI world, they're just a bunch of cool guys. You know, they're fans of music, and the entire engineering team were bass players. And so this project took on a life of its own because they could do something that they were passionate about that they'd never done before, and they just knocked it out of the park. And then we found out afterwards that um, most, if not all, of the Duran albums have been recorded on Neve consoles. So there was a tie-in there as well.
Ah, I see. Oh, that's really cool to know. That is kind of inspired from those early sounds as well. You know,
Hmm.
there's a bit of that heritage in there. That's really cool. I wonder, as you said, you were a fan of Duran Duran. Were there any other artists that you were fans of that you were like, I'd love to have them have a signature model or something like that, or I'll have them play a Dingwall?
Yeah, someone who's not
Oh
playing a
boy.
Dingwall that you watch and go, oh, I wish you were playing one of my basses. They could be watching right now. They might not be.
Yeah. Oh, there's so many. Esperanza Spalding, I think is brilliant. Love to put a bass into her hands. Tal Wickenfield. Who else? Flea. Flea's actually tried one, and that was a long time ago. Um, Gosh, I can't think of anybody else off the top of my head, but those are the ones that have been on my mind recently.
I'm trying to think what a flea Dingwall would look like. That's wild.
That
It'd be
would be
colourful.
cool because it could be like it could be like the pastel colors or like the flea bass, but then with the fan frets. That'd be pretty cool actually.
Yeah,
That would
and
be so sick.
Flea just has this vision that is unorthodox and yet is brilliant, and it connects with people, and I think that's what I appreciate about him most. Same with Spalding. She just has this vision that is unlike anybody else, and it's on another level, and I love that.
Yeah, it's like you want the artist to bring out as much art as possible and be inspiring, and that's how he inspires other people. You know, that have a unique voice and something to say, or
Yes.
something, some sounds to make.
Yeah, it's kind of like a
Essentially.
partnership where we're creating a tool, and it's funny. I didn't think about it until a few years ago, but bass players are basically communicating an emotion, a musical idea or a musical emotion, and they're limited to the tips of their fingers to communicate with. And so the tool they use becomes their only connection, or almost their only connection to their audience. And so um, giving them a tool that allows them to do that more effectively, to me is a pretty wonderful experience.
And that sings to the sort of versatility of the instrument overall, I think. The fact that you can just hand someone a Dingwall, whether it be a an NG2, an NG3, a combustion, a Z3, the new SP1, all these kind of things. You can kind of give it to them and almost like a blank canvas. Go forth and create, and we're just here to sort of help be a vehicle for that creation, which I think is very, very cool personally. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. That's the goal.
Absolutely. And the whole fan fret nature is something that a lot of people can be intimidated by. You know, they're like, oh, I'm not sure if I'd be able to play one of those, or I'm not sure if, you know, be able to adapt quickly to one of those. But
yeah,
when you've got one in your hands, you do quickly adjust, I think. And so, Sheldon, what would you say to someone who has never played a Dingwall before, and, you know, why they should maybe check one out?
First thing I'd say is don't look down, because change is scary. And if you look down, you're going to notice the frets are unusual looking compared to what you're used to. And then the second thing would be to just stay in the lower frets until you get used to it. A lot of players will try and do chords. They'll look they'll try and break it. And so they'll look for the hardest thing to play possible and go, oh, well, that's really uncomfortable, so this is not for me. But the reality is most people don't get paid to do the really tricky, hard stuff. And frankly, probably don't spend a lot of time doing that. And so if you're a bass player that spends most of your time in the meaty part of the neck, then get used to that first, and you'll be surprised how quickly you adapt. And yeah, you might have to stretch it a little bit more, or you may have to change your shoulder and relax your shoulder a little bit. These are all good things.
Yeah. I think that it's so true what you said. Like, most of the people that are making good money from this are probably not doing the crazy bits up here. We had Pete Griffin on last week, who echoed a similar sentiment. And I was just thinking then, well, Sheldon, I think what you need to do is create a bass that just has the frets in the money zone, and then just nothing beyond there. Just not even fretless.
Just stops at fret 7. Just no, I'm not even 12. Not even 12. I would argue 5 personally.
It's a big gap in the middle.
Just a huge blank piece of maple. There's no frets, and and then written upside down so you can view it looking down. It just says "Stop it."
Stop overplaying.
The guitarist and keyboard player are about to shout at you. Don't play up here with an octave pedal. Just play down there. Just do that.
Yeah, come on now.
Yeah.
But going back, Sheldon, a little bit to when you kind of first started out, were you ever tempted to, because I know you started out making guitars, didn't you, in the earlier days, rather than just basses? Were you ever tempted to kind of continue that on and do more guitars?
Oh, for sure. And as a matter of fact, still working on guitars at the moment. But let me back up a little bit. So I like to say that I started the company on a kitchen table twice. And so there was the first time, no tools, no money, no shop, literally using a kitchen table to work on, and built the company up to a certain point where we were shipping to Europe and a little bit to the States. And then a fire took us up. And so that wiped everything out, including all our guitar tooling and our bass tooling and you know, a huge stash of quilted maple. And so started over again on the kitchen table. And at that time, the basses were taking off and the guitars were selling well, but not like the basses were. Like the basses, you could tell there was something boiling with the basses that the guitars just didn't have that same kind of spark. And so the decision, well, I was underinsured, so I had no choice but to retool only one model. And so it was an easy choice. Retool the basses, and then we'll do the guitars as soon as possible. And as soon as possible took 15 years or something like that. And by that time, we had so much momentum on the basses that the guitars were almost Almost not. Well, I mean, there is a certain stigma in the guitar world that if you're known for building basses, then there's no way you could possibly build a guitar. And I don't know if there's truth to that. Certainly, some brands that have come out with guitars, they feel like miniature basses, and so that's not what guitar players want. But there are other brands like Fender that do both, and they do both equally well. So where
Yeah.
would we land in that? Hopefully, would be one of the companies that could do both equally well. But we're so backed up on bases now that it's difficult to expend too many resources towards guitars.
Yeah, absolutely. And in a way, it's like that fire, devastating at the time, has almost changed the trajectory of the company, or it could have a little bit, where you've gone, okay, now I have to only focus on this one model, and keep the bases going. It's funny how fate can do things like that.
Yeah, I try and look at it as a positive. And so whether there was a recession after that or not, I choose to think of it as well, not having to build bases for a year and a half and build up orders as I was retooling, allowed us to have a backlog of orders to take us through the next couple of years. And so I look at that as being, maybe it saved us.
Yeah, maybe. I'd like to say so that we feel better about it.
Yeah.
But what that story has brought about as well is that I think that if you've still got it, I think you need to make a bass out of that kitchen table. Clearly, it deserves to be made into something to commemorate the birthing the company twice.
The IKEA bass.
Yes,
the IKEA bass.
Oh, don't joke! Don't joke, Sheldon. I'm building at the minute. Pause at the moment.
Well, James Hetfield from Metallica has a guitar made of a wall of a shed that they used to rehearse in before they released like their first album.
Wow!
It's just made of wood from that shed, so you could definitely do the same thing. Go on, Johnny. I know what you're going to. I know what you've got there. I know what you've got.
So are you familiar with the brand Aldi and the supermarket Aldi?
Oh, yes, I've heard of it.
Yeah. So I'm currently refinishing this Sterling Ray 2 in
Okay.
Aldi blue to be an Aldi bass. It's going to be Aldi branded. It's going to have all the logos on it, and it's going to be the stupidest thing I've ever done. But then that made me think, like, oh, IKEA bass. What more brands could we do? Just make it really, really silly.
Well, I think that's going to look cool. I'm looking forward to seeing that.
I'm not sure how far along it is.
I'm excited to see it too.
It's gonna be dumb. You can buy like loads of Aldi merch as well, so I'm going to try and like don all of the Aldi merch I can get, and then make a song out of it.
Yeah.
It's going to be a good time.
Wow.
Well, if you do that, Johnny, I'll respray mine, because I have a Ray 2 as well, but it's in like a seafoam green, and I'll do the Asda / Walmart bass.
Oh yeah. Hell yeah. Just keep going until brands, will pay you to
please,
to use it.
Please.
Pay you or sue you.
Yeah. Well,
I'm hoping for one of them. Yeah. It's not the lawsuit. Like, fair use. Come on. It's a parody.
Well, I was going to say, speaking of people who pay for things, I would like to take a moment, please, to give a shout out to our top tier Patreon members. Those are the people, our tier 3 Patreon, who keep the lights on for this podcast and keep the wonderful guests like Mr. Sheldon Dingwall coming along. So for tier 3, I'm going to give our members a quick shout out, and then, if you don't mind, chaps, we're going to do this giveaway, shall we? We've got this Schecter bass right next to me that we're going to announce the winner of in just a minute. And these are the lucky people who are being entered into that draw. Here we go. Carlos Bonas, Jim Goldstein, Tom Kuistra, Daniel McColgan, Frank Bethel, Sam Matons, Travis Williams, Kaddish D. Radish, Eric Molyneux, Charles Johnson, Dean Gordon, Dow Hazelhurst, Jevons, Duncan Watson, Emily Gonzalez, Alan Wadey, Alexander Shawn, Ethan Eichhorn, Justin A, Jonas on bass, Yost Crone, Mark W, and Brett Linkowski. Thank you, wonderful Tier 3 members. I've never seen your faces or some of them, but I'm sure you are all wonderful, wonderful people. Very, very sexy people indeed. Right, here we go. This is the bass in question. It is a wonderful little Schecter C4, quite a rare one actually. Actually, Sheldon, it's got a bit of a Dingwall-esque kind of saddles with the bridge going on here.
Yeah, the ABM style.
I might need to talk to them about that.
Someone's getting a letter. Interesting.
It's a great bass, like I said before. You can change the pickups to go from series to parallel to single coil. You can get loads of different tones out of this one without the need for any active preamps or anything like that. I am going to share my screen ever so quickly, and then you'll see we will give this away to a lucky person whose name shall appear on this wheel. Okay, here we go.
My body is ready.
And the winner is Ethan Eichhorn. Congratulations, my friends. Long-term Tier 3 member. Well done, Ethan. You've earned it. Good job. Well done. And we'll be in touch very shortly over Patreon to organise getting this lovely bass into your hands. And that was it. If you want to become a Tier 3 member or a Tier 2 member perhaps, or even a Tier 1 member, whichever tickles your fancy or whichever you can afford, any support is greatly appreciated for the podcast. If you click the link down in the description or just head to www.patreon.com/inthepocket, then you can find out how right there you can sign up to be entered into these giveaways and support us financially every month. It really, really helps. So thank you very much to all of you. And that was all for that segment. So thank you for sticking with me on that one, gents.
Very cool.
You're very welcome.
Shall we, speaking of things that are very cool, move on to talk about what's one of the most exciting recent releases, I think, and that is the SP1 coming out of Dingwall now. I today spent my whole day with the Dingwall Super P in my hands, reviewing it, recording some tones, and then before shipping it off to our dear Chris, who was then going to do the same. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the conception of this bass, why it was made, where it was made, and the kind of the journey of this bass, and to tell the people a little bit more about it. So, Sheldon, do you want to give a brief description of what the Super P is and what it's trying to achieve?
Really good question. I remember years and years and years ago, we've always been known as the bright color company. Back when nobody was doing bright colors, we were pushing them forward, and that's great. I remember going to see somebody playing in a more of a rootsy band, and I was struck by how our bass just looked out of place in that environment. It sounded great, but a Kawasaki green spaceship-looking bass just did not look right with that style of music, and so it was real clear to me at that point that we needed something more traditional. And I mean, man, the P is such an iconic bass, and my ears personally have always been tuned to a P versus a J, and so it was a lot of trial and error and trying to pay reverence to the original And yet, what could we do to improve it? Because I mean, there's a million of them out there, and there's a couple of different ways you could go about it. You could say, well, listen, we're just going to look at your parts catalog, and I like that bridge, I like those pickups, I like those tuners. Okay, slap our logo on it. That's one way of doing it. But what's close to and I say our as in our entire company, what's close to our heart is what can we add that brings it forward, and is going to add more performance to a traditional style. And so that was about a 2-year journey. Even though we were already making a Super P in the custom shop, the everything had to be reconsidered to make it more manufacturing friendly, and also to create some subtle changes that actually most people won't even ever notice. They'll just receive the benefits of a lighter body and not really think about, well, how is it lighter? Did you select the wood? No, we just made it thinner, and by making it thinner, we made it lighter. There are other things like the cutout in the treble horn that if you don't look for it, you won't notice it, but it's there when you move your hand up, and you have more room. 5-bolt neck. If you look at the grain in the neck, you'll also see that they're very consistent. The grain has been selected to be as twist free as possible, and sound as good as possible. So there are all these tweaks done to the instrument to take what is already, in most people's eyes, a pretty perfect instrument to start with, and then just take it up a notch.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, it would have been so easy to just go, well, we already do a P, so like, there we go. We'll just manufacture it elsewhere, perhaps, and then that'll be it. But you took the time to kind of redevelop it and make it more obtainable for people, which is great, or make it easier to manufacture and get into people's hands. I want to know what the thought process was with the scale length of the Super P, because is it the same as like the custom shop ones normally?
It's the same as the custom shop Super Ps, but it's 2 inches shorter than what we call our long scale bases. So the NG, the Combustions, the Z series, those are all a 37-inch B. For the Super Series, the J and the P, we've shortened things down by 2 inches for a couple of different reasons. One, I remember being backstage, and this is when I was showing guitars as opposed to basses, and I'm waiting for my time with the guitar player, and I'm observing the bass player, and a FedEx truck shows up. They bring out this box, opens up the case, and then there's a brand new bass. It's a signature model for him. He picks it up, puts it on a strap, does a couple of jumps, doesn't even play a note, takes it off and says it's head heavy, send it back. And I went, oh, balance is pretty important to bass players. And so from that point on, taking balance very seriously. And so, I'm straying so far from your original question. I'm forgetting the intent. But balance is hugely important, and as is this aesthetic that we've all grown used to seeing, and we all have an emotional connection. If you don't feel an emotional connection to a musical instrument, you're not going to pick it up. And so if you're going to do a traditional looking P, it has to look as much like a traditional P as possible. And yes, I realize the irony of we have a fan fret multiscale P, which doesn't look anything like the original. But it's still, as best as possible, has that vibe that connects to your emotions of original P. If we're going to try and add an extra 2 inches of scale to that, we'd have to shrink the headstock or just make it the neck longer, and it wouldn't balance. And so there's that reason. And then also the idea that if it's in a more traditional band, sustain is probably not going to be something that is your number one goal. And so a shorter scale has a faster decay, and so it's going to be punchier sounding versus a longer scale that's more sustainy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose the majority of precision basses are 4 strings, so
Mm-hmm.
having that 35 on the E instead of a 37 on an E, that might be a bit much. So I think that the thought to prioritize perhaps the 4-string design in that was very sensible, to cater towards that traditional player a little more, and to keep it passive as well. Was there a temptation to throw a preamp in there, or was it always, we're going to keep it simple?
The idea is to keep it simple, but offer future upgradability. And so we've already baked into the design that if you want to add a preamp, it's quite easy to. We would have introduced the preamp initially, but would like people to get used to the instrument and just like you say, you play yours passive, and the reason you can play it passive is that it sounds good passive. And so we want people to be able to get used to the instrument and the sound of the instrument and realize, hey, this is a great sounding passive bass, before they start adding preamps and twisting knobs and trying to make it sound better.
100%. And I think there's a temptation as well when you get an active bass in your hands. You just assume, well, it has to be played active. And also, furthermore to that, in my personal experience, a lot of active basses that give you that option of passive and active, there's a switch in there. When you go on to the passive mode, you sort of sit there and go, oh, I can see this was designed to not be used in this mode. And the passive is just there almost as if an emergency switch in case the battery dies. And it's just like not the same, basically. Johnny's mentioned a story to me where you were playing an active bass and the battery died and you had to flick over to the passive mode and there was just an unbelievable drop in volume. Big disaster. But whereas I mean, like I've said, I prefer my NG passive, but having played it active, I know full well, unless you're doing crazy things with the bass, middle, and treble, if you're just doing little subtle adjustments, flicking between that active and passive switch, there isn't really a change in volume. There's just a difference in tone, which I think is nice. I did have a quick question. You mentioned then about the Super P is passive, and then in the future there's going to be an option to include a preamp, almost like it's base DLC when you think about it, downloadable content, like an expansion pack. Am I right in saying with the NG range, I can take the scratch player off my NG2, and is there already a space routed out where I can put the pickups as if it was going to be an NG3 and then rewire that? Or have I got that wrong? There is. Okay.
There is. Now, the NG has gone through several revisions, and they started out with rectangular pickups. And on that version, that would be version 1 and 2, the rectangular pickups kind of overlapped a little bit. So you would have to, you would be able to move the neck pickup into the neck position. You wouldn't be able to add a third pickup in the middle without doing a little bit extra routing. But on the,
I think I have a newer version. Mine are quite round. Look about right to you?
yes, and so you could move your neck pickup in that case to the neck position, or you could add a third pickup. The route is already there.
That is very cool. Thank you for letting me know. I will be doing that.
Oh God, we've started him on a journey now. What have you done, Sheldon? He's going to be talking about this for months. Amazing. With back to the design of that Super P, one thing that's interesting as well is that you can then put the pickups into series or parallel, just like the bass that Ethan has just won himself. And that is such an underrated feature. My God, I absolutely love, Stingrays with the humbucker running in parallel. And that's one of the huge differences between the kind of the Sterling stuff and the American Music Man stuff, is that it's series versus parallel a lot of the time, which is wild that they decided to wire them in series. I'm very glad you decided to put that in because it's a great combination to have. I love that sound of the two pickups in parallel. Was that always, yeah, we got to have that functionality in there over like a pickup blend, or was it something that you discovered along the way?
Well, series parallel, I was doing series parallel experimentations back in the 80s and early 90s on guitar. And I didn't come up with the idea. I read an article in Guitar Player magazine written by Rick Turner. And the way he described it, I was just like, yeah, that sounds amazing. And so I was already a huge fan of series and parallel options before I started building basses. The first basses, we were getting our electronics from Bartolini, and they were shipped with blends. And so the very first basses we built had blends. It didn't come until maybe a year later that I started adding the rotary switch, and then it was only as an option because people were the blend was so ingrained in bass players' minds that there was a lot of resistance to a rotary switch back then. And at one point, when I started to notice the difference between the tone of a blend and the tone of a rotary switch, I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to put my foot down. And so we just started telling customers, listen, it's no longer an option. You have to go with a rotary switch. And eventually people, they just got used to it, and it became a thing. And I'm really happy that we were able to do that.
We've talked about that before. I think me and Johnny were speaking about that the other day. I kind of like more of the rotary sort of preset based. You know, here's this soloed, here's that soloed, here's series, here's parallel. Mainly because I would sit there, you know, sort of going, oh, do I like it here or do I like it there? And I'd go back and forth for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. Are there any other sort of functions or features that you've had to have that sort of foot down moment with? You know, like, okay, I know some people want this, some people want that, but we're going with this.
Yeah, that happens quite a bit off, actually. Even with the multiscale, we almost went out of business in 1999 because everything was ripped jeans and retro and Black Crows, which I love, but they are a retro style band. And we were looking towards the future, and our instruments were looking towards the future. And that was just the most uncool thing you could do at the time. And so I built a parallel fret prototype, took it to NAM, and just out of like sheer, like, have to do something because we can't sell basses. And just before that show, Bass Player Magazine came out with the top 10 gear ideas of the last 10 years, and they talked about the Novak's fan fret system, and they showed a picture of our bass. And so all that work that went into this parallel prototype was for naught because we show up at NAM and everybody's like, "Oh yeah, fan frets are cool now." Anyhow,
Wow.
so there's that.
Yet
Go ahead.
another moment like the fire, and then this. It's really interesting to sort of see this journey. You've had so many sort of like the butterfly effect moments when you think about it, which is really,
Oh
really
yeah.
very interesting. Yeah, exactly. Although I'm picturing like a really grungy Dingwall now, you know, with like like not the fan frets and something. And it's like, we've got Chris Novoselic from Nirvana, like an endorsement and all that sort of stuff. Like, it sounds kind of cool actually, but I'm glad you stuck to your guns and obviously powered through that wave of what sounds like quite a stressful and uncertain moment, really, in the company's history.
Yeah, there's a certain, and I often refer to memories that are very clear, and I have a clear memory of playing this parallel fret bass, and I'm not knocking parallel fret basses. I'm knocking the parallel fret bass that I made. And just going, you know what, this is lacking everything that I've gotten used to in multiscale. And so I can't in good conscience sell this bass. I don't feel good about it. And so I was very happy to not put that into production. It was like a relief. Um, and, you know, it's hard to say now, but I think I probably would have just ran the company into the ground rather than do something I wasn't proud of and sell something I didn't feel was as good as we could possibly make.
Yeah, it sounds like you only want to put something out that you're proud to put your name on, which I think is the best way, personally.
Yeah, nobody gets into
Yeah.
building guitars because they want to make a lot of money. That's not the kind of industry it is. It's an industry that has huge benefits in terms of feeding your soul. And that's the same with a lot of businesses in the arts. That's why most people are attracted to it. That's why I'm attracted to it. The money is secondary, and the whatever it is that feeds your soul, that's the primary driver.
Yeah.
I am here for the money.
Well, you're in the wrong business too, then, my friend.
Yeah.
Dingwall, what was Dingwall? Sheldon. Oi, Dingwall. Oi, Horrocks. What I was going to say was, what would you say is your favourite thing about running Dingwall?
Oh man, you know, the people that we get to serve. Like I said, I travel all around the world, and every bass player I meet is just awesome, and we get to have a connection with them. It's really interesting in business. I didn't read this in a book. I've just learned this, and that is, every business has a founder, and that founder has a set of values and a personality that attracts people to come work with them and attracts their customers. And so every single one of our customers is someone I would personally sit down and enjoy having a beer with, because we're all of similar values. And so you get to have friends all over the world. And there's, in my mind, there's nothing better than that.
Amen.
Amen.
Absolutely. Well, I'm sorry to break that streak of meeting nice bass players.
Yeah.
You know.
Sorry about that.
Well, thank you very much. This has been a lovely episode so far. We're going to continue things over onto our Patreon in just a minute, with some wonderful questions that everyone from tier 2 and upwards has submitted for you. So there's lots for us to dive into over there. So if that's of interest to any of you audience members, make sure you hit the link in that description to go and check it out. Before we sign off of this main episode, though, it's time, Sheldon, to put you in the hot seat. Okay.
Uh-oh.
So we're going to give you some quick fire questions. I mean, quick, these are one-word answers for you to answer. Just the first thing that pops to your head, etc. I'm going to start things off. Chris, have you got a list in front of you there?
I am ready and raring to go.
Fantastic. Here we go. Question number 1, Sheldon Dingwall. Pick or fingers?
Fingers.
Question number 2, active or passive?
Passive.
Nice. Question number 3, rounds or flats?
Rounds. 100%.
Question number 4, 4-string or 5?
5.
Nice. Question number 5. In your gigging life, would you prefer to have in-ear monitors or be on wedges?
In-ears.
Nice.
Question number 6, P or J?
P.
A quick B. Nice. Question number 7. What would be your desert island bass?
Hibiki X Factor.
Oh, Wow. No one's ever said that.
No.
I know it's meant to be quick fire, but why is that the one?
I have one in my office, and I look at it every day. And I still can't wrap my mind around how Phil, as a small manufacturer, came up with such an amazing, such a high developed tuning system, and the pickups were awesome, and the preamp was awesome, and the knobs were custom, and the drop D tuner. Like it's just a tour de force of genius. And Phil actually offered me a job one time, and I always valued that. Being from Canada, there would have been no way, or it would have been more difficult than I was willing to get into. But I always felt a real connection to Phil. Always thought he was a genius.
Amazing. What was the job offer? Was it a janitor?
That's about what I would have qualified for back then. Yeah, just to come down and work with him. We hit it off, and you know, you can tell when somebody is of like mind. And we even the first time we met, we probably talked for at least a half an hour straight, and it was the conversation just flowed, and you could tell that there wasn't a lot of misunderstanding each other. It was just like everything he said, I got. It was like it made perfect sense.
Amazing. Just click,
Yep.
Sounds like a great first date, if you ask me. Question number 8. What's the best bass effect?
Well, fingers, and I would say unbelievably, what Dark Glass has done for bass distortion, and it's really incredible if you toggle back and forth between clean and distorted. And I'm not talking buzzsaw distortion, although maybe if you want to try that as well, but just adding just a little bit of saturation, just how much it just flows the bass into the mix. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, that additional, like, even if you just got it enough to add that additional, like, harmonic content, that little bit of saturation really, really goes a long way. And totally agree.
It's the reason why I run majority of my pedals, be they Dark Glass ones or not, and drive pedals. I drive the mix all the way up and the drive all the way down most of the time, because it just gives you a bit of bite saturation that's not at the point of like over the top distortion that's covering the tone. So I just want that little crunch that's gelling things together and giving you a little bit of bite rather than taking over your entire tone. So yeah, it's interesting. Lovely. Question number 9 is, what would you say is your unpopular bass opinion, or like a hot take you have for bass?
Oh man, I can't think of anything off the top of my head. Mid-range. I feel very strongly that mid-range is. You said one word, right? Okay, so mid-range.
Oh, no. It doesn't have to be one word for this one. I mean,
just a statement. Yeah.
Yeah, a statement, I suppose. Is mid-range good or mid-range bad?
Mid-range, I believe, is incredibly important, and the reason is that I believe that our ears and our brains have developed to be sensitive in the mid-range, because that's where a lot of the communication happens, and so. Yes, I love low frequencies, but low frequencies by themselves aren't all that musical. They provide a foundation, but the mid range is where you get the note information. That's where you hear the pitch. That's where you hear the articulated passages. And so mid range to me is like so important. Fundamental, it's important, but it kind of takes care of itself. Doesn't need a lot of help. But mid range, clear mid range is incredibly important.
That is the one. Fantastic.
Totally agree. Now, the final question. Now, there's a bit of a ramp up to this question. Do you, Sheldon? Do you have a favorite pop culture thing, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, the Muppets, all these kind of things? Do you have a favorite? That kind of fantasy, not even fantasy universe, like a thing like that.
I actually don't. And I've been this way my entire life. I've never read fiction. I've always been a nonfiction guy.
Okay.
I would, and most of my team are the opposite. Most of my team, are into Lego, or they're into fantasy culture, or graphic novels and things like that. But for me, it's popular mechanics, popular science is what I'd read when I was a kid.
Okay. Well, I mean, there's obviously the Hellboy Dingwall, which is I personally think is super cool. But we were going to ask you which what we usually ask people which Star Wars character would make the best bass player, or we had Pete Griffin on last week, who we asked him what Muppets character would be the best bass player. But I will go one further, since you're a man of science. Which historical scientific figure do you think would make the best bass player?
Oh, I think Einstein, for sure.
Okay.
Einstein was a badass.
Yes.
Hell yeah. Here's the one.
We'll go with that then. Very good. I like it. I like it a lot.
The daddy of science itself. I love it. Fantastic. Well, Sheldon, that is the end of our quick fire questions, and you did very well in that hot seat there. I can see how hot it is, and it was very hot indeed. So thank you very much for putting up with us. And putting up with us for this whole hour. And it's been amazing to have you on. Like we said, we are going to continue this conversation over on Patreon. So you can go and check us out on there, and you can access that extra bit of episode. Before I kind of give all the details on where people can find people, etc., what you guys need to do, another little call to action. Sorry to do all this admin at the end. I know. You need to go to instagram.com/ in the pocket pod, or just follow us on Instagram. Just search our podcast name. It's very, very simple to find us. Okay. So if you search on there, give us a little follow. It really helps us to reach more people, etc., etc. Exactly the same goes for ranking us 5 stars on your podcast listening platform of choice, be that Spotify or Apple Podcasts, etc. It really helps to do with algorithms to help us reach more wonderful, like-minded, cool bass players such as yourselves. And the last bit, of course, you know it's coming. It's patreon.com/in the pocket pod, where you can support us on tier 1, which is just a tip, just a monthly, hey, you guys are doing a good job, thank you very much type thing. Tier 2 is a little bit more expensive, but you get access to the bonus piece of content that we're about to go and shoot next. And then tier 3 is all of the above, but you also get a shout out and you get entered into those monthly gear giveaways, like we did on today's show. There will be another giveaway announced next week, and I've yet to unbox it. It's downstairs. It's a mystery to Chris. I've not told him what it is yet, but I received it in the post this week, so I'm excited to dive in and tell you all about it. Before we sign off on this main episode, Sheldon, what should the people do? Where can they find you and Dingwall on the internet?
You can, the nice thing about a name like Dingwall, it's easy to find us. And so you can just Google Dingwall and you'll find us either on YouTube or Facebook or the web or Instagram. Whatever is your social media of choice, we're there.
Fantastic. And Chris, how about you, good sir?
You can find me quite literally everywhere under That Guy on Bass. Instagram and YouTube is where you will mostly find me. And I think if the stars align, I will have my own Dingwall video out by the end of the week, which I am, or by the time this comes out, which I'm very excited to film. Once that bass reaches my grubby little ginger mitts, I'll be diving straight in, which I'm very excited about. Johnny, where can the people find you?
Well, the same goes for me, really. Hopefully the same story there as we're checking out the same guitar. So it's going to be a good time. You can follow me on YouTube. Just search for my name. Similar, there's not many Jonny Dibbles out there, but luckily the SEO is doing its thing and I'm the top one. Yeah. So just search for my name and you'll find me. Follow us on Instagram as well. Instagram, YouTube. That's kind of two main places where I'm hanging out these days. So come and have a chat. Let's do it. Love talking to like-minded bass players such as yourselves. Once again, everyone, thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time.
Tatty bye.
You guys are amazing. Thank you.